we're getting ready to have a hard stop in this country.
We can't even run our own government.
Bottom line, nobody wants a shutdown.
Seems like government shutdowns are starting to become some sort of unofficial American habit.
Nobody wins in a government shutdown.
So what exactly are the economic and political costs of a shutdown? Depending on how long the shutdown goes, it could hurt economic growth. Goldman Sachs reports that shutdowns mainly impact federal workers, and those workers account for 2% of the GDP.
Federal employees are being held hostage, and we're being held hostage.
But thanks to a 2019 law, those employees eventually get back pay. The people who might lose out the most are restaurants, retailers, and private contractors who rely heavily on the federal government being open. First, you must understand the difference between a partial and a total shutdown, and that's all about appropriation bills.
The way the system is set up now, where we don't go through a process, where we don't bring up individual appropriation bills, that puts all the power in the hands of a few people.
For the last decade, the number of annual spending bills has stood at 12. In 2019, Congress passed 5 out of 12, making it a partial shutdown that lasted 34 days, the longest shutdown in U.S. history. Even though it wasn't a total shutdown, it still cut the level of GDP growth by $11 billion. While $3 billion of that was never regained, according to the Senate's Joint Economic Committee Democrats, not all of it was lost forever. Growth typically happens a quarter after a shutdown ends. In 2019, there were 7 sectors that lost big, including the National Park Service. Air travel in major cities temporarily stopped. A shutdown also brings major delays in loan disbursements and processing of millions of passport applications. And let's not forget the federal employees, 800,000 of which were furloughed or worked without pay in 2019.
Yes, maybe they'll get a paycheck at the end of the shutdown, but that doesn't put food on the table in the short run. It's not just a shutdown. It's a hugely embarrassing moment for the most powerful nation in the world, the richest nation in the history of mankind.
Fluctuations in economic growth isn't the only concern when shutdowns happen. Consumer confidence is also at stake.
The longer this goes on, you will see impacts on consumer spending and ripple effects throughout the economy.
Together, Representative Beyer and Senator Tim Kaine have proposed the End Shutdowns Act.
Basically, Congress stays, and we only do emergency action, things like if there's a flood or a hurricane or whatever.
And Senator Johnson made a similar move in 2019.
It's just so incredibly common sense. If there's dysfunction and you don't fund all of government or even an agency, you don't shut it down, you just fund at last year's levels.
So why do shutdowns keep happening?
We leave it up to Congress to come up with a plan. That means no plan.
A major variable is CRs, or continuing resolutions, which are short-term funding fixes. It's a Band-Aid. Basically, they temporarily pass spending bills for federal operations when appropriations haven't been passed. And they're used a lot. Congress has only completed votes for a federal budget without CRs on time 4 times. So while CRs have become a crutch for Congress, they can also be the saving grace to keep pieces of a president's budget request afloat. President Biden has urged Congress to prioritize keeping the $3.7 billion budget for Medicaid and Marketplace programs and the $1.9 billion budget for refugee resettlement in the continuing resolution. A 2019 Pew Research Center survey showed nearly 60% of American adults deem a shutdown a very serious problem. And the disapproval rate for presidents handling shutdown negotiations isn't flattering either.